Green list. As we've worked through this protracted lockdown, Sophie, as we've watched each of the stages come and go, and we approach the next one on the 17th coming up, when international travel will be allowed. We've started to raise our eyes to the horizon, the thought of actually getting out of the UK after a year in which most of us spent it very much stuck at home. It has been a long wait to find out which countries might be on the list. Holidaymakers can think about booking, and indeed people who've been separated from friends and family, been unable to travel. The traffic light system the government has been talking about for several weeks, we know what that will entail. Essentially three categories: green, amber and red. Green, the countries where you will be able to travel, albeit with a test before you go and a test after you return, but you will not be required to quarantine at all on return. So a big change in the rules that have applied. The amber list, which is expected to be considerably longer than the green list, there will still be a requirement to quarantine for 10 days with at least 2 COVID tests in that time. Crucially, that will be quarantine at home rather than in a hotel, which will be what will be required of those who want to visit the red list countries that currently applies as a blanket ban across the board for travellers from the UK. That will still be in place. The government's intention here clearly to try and very slowly and cautiously open up travel for individuals, for people to be able to take some holidays while not allowing it to be a return to mass tourism, and the potential for coronavirus and potential variants to be coming back into the UK and travelling both ways, of course. It does not respect borders. They don't want a free-for-all to ensue from this. Of course, it's long overdue for the travel industry, not alone holidaymakers. Just look around me here. Been here all day. It is absolutely deserted by comparison to what a Friday in May, even one during the school holidays, would be like. There's been a handful of travellers through the day, very small number of flights heading out from what is one of Britain's holiday airports here at Gatwick. So they are waiting not just in this airport, but in the surrounding town. Crawley, one of the worst affected towns in the country on many measures by the pandemic, because so many jobs in the wider community are based here, are based within the airport and in the associated industries. So this is an announcement that matters to our road out of the pandemic. It matters to people desperate for a break, frankly, desperate for some sun, desperate for a change of scene. But it also matters.
Paul Kelsey going to have to leave it there because Grant Shapps has just arrived. Let's have a listen to the Transport Secretary.
Downing Street press conference. I'm pleased to be joined here today by Dr. Jenny Harris, from the Chief Executive of the UK Health Security Agency, and Paul Lincoln, who's the Director General of Border Force. We've made enormous progress this year tackling the pandemic across Britain. We're not at the end of it, but the signs are very hopeful. That progress has been hard won by the speed and success of our NHS vaccination programme, by the huge scale of our testing, and by the sheer sacrifice and the discipline of the British public. And so it's important that we don't put that success and undermine it now by putting it at risk. Getting a vaccination feels like being given your life back. The newly vaccinated thanking the wonderful volunteers, people in tears of relief. But as well as the joy, there's also concern about resurgence of COVID, and it's a caution we absolutely share as a government. And it's why the only route out of this pandemic is careful and prudent, a responsible one. Of course, we're also, as a nation, a group of people who thrive on travel, a nation with family ties across the globe. Notably, nearly 1 in 3 new mothers in the UK was born overseas. And in 2019, UK residents took over 93 million trips abroad. So I'm glad to be standing here today announcing the first, albeit tentative, steps towards unlocking international travel. We want a summer in which, with the help of vaccines and testings, we can reunite family and friends, travel to places we love. We want to start looking outward again. Whilst COVID has isolated us, travel reunites us, even if video calls have kept us all connected during the very long lockdowns. There's simply no substitute for human contact. Travel is, of course, also absolutely crucial to rebuilding our economy, bringing long-awaited relief to hard-hit airlines, airports, the tourism sector, which taxpayers have spent £7 billion in supporting. But I have to be absolutely straight with you. Our success in combating COVID here, with 2/3 of adults now vaccinated, is not yet replicated in many places abroad. We in this country have managed to construct a fortress against COVID, but the disease is still prevalent in other parts of the world, most notably at the moment in India. In fact, more new cases of COVID have been diagnosed around the world in the last 7 days than at any time since this pandemic began. Nobody wants to go back into lockdown, not ever. And that's why today's announcement, removing the stay in the UK restrictions from the 17th of May, is necessarily cautious. We must make absolutely sure that the countries we reconnect with are safe, that their infection rates are low and that their vaccination rates are high. It means making sure that we're not incubating the most dangerous variants, that they're not, and that they have safe and secure surveillance in place. And that's why the Global Travel Task Force has come up with the traffic light system classifying destinations by risk. And this is based on data by the Joint Biosecurity Centre, and it will be published on gov.uk. Red countries are those which should not be visited except in the most extreme of circumstances, where repeated testing and isolation in designated government hotels on return is compulsory. Non-UK residents who've been in a red country in the last 10 days will still be barred from entering the UK. I have to tell you now that due to concern about COVID rates and variants of concern, Turkey, the Maldives, Nepal must regrettably be added to the red list today. Amber countries form the biggest group. As with the red list, you should not be travelling to these places right now. Returnees will have to do tests on 3 separate occasions, once before departure, twice after arrival, and isolate in a place of their choosing for 10 days. Finally, we have the green countries, which you will have the opportunity to visit no earlier than the 17th of May, as long as you take a pre-departure test before returning to England and a second PCR test 2 days after you return. And with these green countries, you will not need to quarantine. And travellers will be glad to hear that we've been successful in driving down the costs of tests. However, by necessity, this initial green list must be, I'm afraid, limited. So I'm announcing today that from May the 17th, you'll be able to travel to 12 green list countries and territories, which includes Portugal, Gibraltar, and Israel. I regret the favourite summer destinations like France and Spain and Greece are not yet included, but every 3 weeks from reopening, we'll be reviewing the countries to see how and where we can expand the green list. So this is just a first step. The signs overseas are now more promising as a result of their vaccination programmes beginning to crank up. And as the summer progresses, we hope that more traditional tourist destinations will be unlocked. But we have to turn the key slowly. And green list countries will be placed on a watch list if we start to have any concerns. And if it's necessary because of a new upswing in cases or a new variant, we'll not hesitate to act fast and withdraw green status. So, it's up to you to check thoroughly before travelling. And if you're thinking of booking a holiday in a green list destination, please check the restrictions applying to new arrivals. You can get this information on gov.uk, and it is important because each country has its own restrictions. Indeed, our strong advice is not to book any holiday which does not include a refund in the event that the COVID-related situation changes and you're able to cancel. And I'm afraid we do expect longer delays at airports, and Paul will be saying more about this in just a moment.